only have vigilantes when there's an absence of law.
Paul Watson and his Sea Shepherd Society.
Paul Watson.
Paul Watson.
Paul Watson.
Bad boy of the Canadian environmental movement.
I'll go to prison for as long as it takes.
You place yourself above the Canadian law!
Welcome back to the show. A pleasure to see our next guest. Of course, if you're a fan of Whale Wars, you know that he is part of that storyline. He's the founder of the Sea Shepherd Society, and there's a great documentary out on his life's work in environmental stewardship. Mr. Paul Watson joins us right now. How are you, Paul? Nice to see you.
Thanks.
I guess the first question is maybe what made you sort of do Eco-Pirate and your personal story, because this has been an 8-year odyssey to get this documentary finished. What made you say yes in the first place?
Well, of course, I didn't make it. Trish Dolman made it in Screen Sirens, but you know, I think that we've always been willing to open up what we're doing to different you know, people to perceive it, because I really can't get a handle on what I do. It's from my perspective.
Right.
So try to bring in an outside thing to get a different point of view.
Are you used to it now? I mean, sort of having cameras around and sort of, you know, addressing your passions and what you believe?
We've had camera crews way back from the BBC, put a crew on years ago. And of course, the Whale Wars thing, we had 16 crew on that.
I can't imagine the logistics of, first of all, doing what you're doing, you know, going through the Antarctic, protecting whales, Galapagos, wherever, and then you throw a documentary crew in there as well. That's a lot to handle on a small ship.
Well, the documentary crew don't get in the way. The danger is that you take them for granted, and then people start saying things that maybe they shouldn't say.
Right.
You don't walk down the street and see a woman being raped and do nothing. You don't see a child being molested and do nothing. You don't see a kitten being stomped and do nothing. And you don't sit there and watch a whale die and take his picture and do nothing. I mean, that's just cowardice.
You get quite personal about this. I mean, you talk about, you know, your story and your family and your beliefs and your passions, and, you know, your kids are involved in this and all this kind of stuff. So how did that sit with you to tell that aspect of your story?
Well, you know, I think that it's important that people realize that what we do, we're just normal people, and we have families and we have relationships, and I depend on volunteers who come from all over the world to crew on our ships, and they're normal people. You know? There's this perception that we're like violent eco-terrorist pirates and everything, but you know, our crew come from all different walks of life, and they're really just good people.
You're unlawfully killing whales. You're in violation of international conservation regulations. Remove yourself from these waters. Go back to Japan.
I think what it brought home to me too is you know, you've made a lot of sacrifices in your life. Do you feel like there was a cost in your personal life to being an environmental steward and really standing up for your beliefs and protecting whales?
Well, I think the only thing that I feel that I sacrifice is I wish I could have spent more time with my daughter growing up. But other than that, I feel that it was all been worthwhile. I mean, the message that we're trying to get across is one that's important to every single human being. That is, if we don't save the whales and the fish, and we're not going to save the seas. And if the oceans die, well, we die. I'm trying to get people to understand just how intimately connected we are with the health of our oceans for our own survival.
Yeah, and you are very blunt in sticking up for your methodology and what you do and the confrontations that you're involved in. You don't apologize for that. I don't think I've ever heard you apologize for that, and I don't think you should, but I think a lot of people expect you to sometimes, to say, well, I hope no one gets hurt, and you know, when we have these confrontations.
Well, nobody's ever been injured, and I don't, you know, the intent is that everything we do, we take every precaution to ensure that we don't injure anybody. But there is that perception that what we do is dangerous. Well, it is dangerous, but
Paul, it's dangerous, man.
But
To many people, Paul Watson is simply a dangerous criminal, a pirate on the high seas.
You know, in 35 years, I never lost anybody, and you know, I'm proud of that record.
There's an unflappability that goes throughout your entire crew, and I think it starts with you, that you see in this film, and you're in, you know, situations that I can barely even imagine, and you know, you're coming up to these huge whaling vessels. They're there illegally. That'll make you mad. You see dead whales in the water. That would make you so mad. And then you're in these situations where you're being, you know, you're having confrontations with these guys. How do you have a Zen place? Do you have, or because you seem to hide that outrage really well sometimes?
I think what you have to do is focus on the strategy that you're trying to implement, focus on the tactics. You can't get emotional at that point because everybody's life is dependent upon, well, on my decisions. You know, I don't really get angry. I think that's probably an advantage on that. I'm primarily driven by concern and by, you know, really a desire to actually, you know, stop this.
When you watch the film, you see these whaling vessels from Japan that shouldn't even be in those waters. And I'm sitting here in Canada and Vancouver, and I don't realize that this is happening until I see it on Whale Wars or until I see it on your show. So how important is it to you for people to have that moment where they go, wait a second, how is this happening?
Well, I think the most important weapon that anyone can have is a camera. And what that does is it brings a story to everybody. I mean, it's no longer out of sight and out of mind.
Yeah.
And what we do is dramatic, and that gets people to, feel like they're part of the story. Everybody is now aware that Japan's illegally killing whales in Antarctica, and it's because of the power of the camera.
He's one of my heroes. Paul was probably one of the younger people involved in Greenpeace, but Paul was kind of the radical among the radicals.
There's this sort of back and forth in Eco-Pirate. A lot of talk about, of course, you being a founding member of Greenpeace, a fracture happening at a certain point, and there's still some tension between you and Greenpeace. Is that accurate? Are you guys still a little bit at loggerheads?
Well, they hate us.
Right. Right. So yes.
Well, we've tried to work with Greenpeace, but in fact, just last year they officially removed me as one of their co-founders off their website.
Really?
Now I'm just an early member.
Right.
But,
he was in a couple of meetings.
The big difference between Sea Shepherd and Greenpeace is that we're actually not even a protest organization. We're an interventionist organization.
And you guys are doing work in the Antarctic right now, in Galapagos.
Yeah.
Where else are you active?
Next week we head into the Libyan war zone to go after poachers that are taking advantage of the war, bluefin tuna poachers. We're in about 23 different countries, and what we're doing is encouraging people in those countries to become active branches.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me and for sharing your story. Eco-Pirate is it's a great piece of work, and I think it's a great homage to the man that you are and the work that you've put in to make the world a better place for everybody. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.